In this country, you can live in the middle of the desert, grow your own food, raise cattle under open skies. But there's still one thing you can't escape. HOA Karens and their self-appointed enforcers. You think your land is free? You've got maps, notarized deeds, legal documents, doesn't matter. They'll still come, clipboard in hand, rules they made up, and a name that sounds like a 5-star spa. Willow Creek HOA. They thought printing a logo gave them the right to march onto my property. But this time, they picked the wrong man. I never thought I'd be standing on my porch, phone in, my left hand recording, loaded Remington in my right, while 5 HOA uniformed men stomped across the lawn I just mowed last week, like they were patrolling the border. But that's exactly what happened on that fateful morning. The Texas sun was blistering, hot enough to bake the dirt beneath their boots. Each step left a mark. Trailing behind them was a rented moving truck, oversized with faded plates and the word evidence scribbled in black Sharpie across the cargo door. Like they were about to bust a cartel, but no, what they were. After was my ranch. "We're seizing this property under HOA violation code," yelled a bald man waving a clipboard toward my cattle barn like he was the sheriff of some imaginary HOA town in his head. I didn't move. My eyes never left theirs. One of them unrolled a reel of yellow tape labeled HOA enforcement and started wrapping it around my barn gate. 2 others slapped up warning notices like they were federal agents executing a raid. It would have been hilarious if I hadn't seen it coming. I'm no naive veteran. My name is Eli Morgan, 2 tours in Afghanistan, and if there's one thing I learned over there, the enemy doesn't knock. They climb fences. They smash gates. They pretend they are the law, but the law doesn't stand with them. It stands with me, and I've got every paper to prove it. Land deed, boundary maps, a county ruling stating this land is not under any HOA jurisdiction. I stepped down the 3 front steps, dust cracking beneath my boots, and shouted loud enough for the cows in the pen to lift their heads. "You touch one more fence post, and I swear you'll all be front-page news by sunrise." They froze. One of them stepped back. But the tallest, shades on, hair slicked back with half a bottle of gel, smirked. He pointed that clipboard at me like it was a loaded gun. "You think we're bluffing, old man?" I met his stare. No blink, just a slow, cold smile. "No. I think you just handed me all the evidence I need." No sooner had I finished saying that when bang! A loud clatter came from the barn. One of the HOA guys screamed, "He's got surveillance! Cameras in there!" And just like that, they all charged toward the red barn, throwing open doors, ripping at wires, scrambling for footage they were too late to erase. But what they'd find wasn't what they expected. And that's when I knew. The counterattack had begun. The moment those HOA thugs yanked open the barn doors, they triggered a chain reaction I'd been waiting months for. See, I didn't just install cameras in that barn. I wired the place like it was a forward operating base. Motion sensors, redundant, cloud uploads, and a high-decibel alarm system designed to let the whole county know when someone tried something stupid. And this was stupid with a clipboard. As the alarm blared loud enough to rattle the cattle fence, the smug guy in sunglasses, yeah, the one with the slicked hair and delusions of authority, spun around and barked orders like he thought he was leading a SWAT team. "Secure the footage," he yelled. Too late. That footage was already streaming to 3 different drives, a secure cloud folder, and a private group chat with a few of my old Marine buddies, some of whom now worked in state law enforcement. Let me back up for a second. You're probably wondering how the hell we got here. 5 fake officers in pressed khakis trying to hijack a ranch in Texas like it's their HOA dictated right. Well, let me tell you exactly where it started. 3 months ago, the day I finally said, "Enough." After 2 decades in the Marines, after losing my wife to cancer and raising my son until he went off to college, I realized I had no reason to stay in the city. I didn't need HOA bake sales. I didn't want neighbor complaints about flagpoles, barking dogs, or the color of my truck. I wanted freedom. So I bought this land just outside Cypress Ridge, Texas. 15 acres of open sky, red dirt, and green pasture. A little broken-down barn, a crooked old gate, a wraparound porch that needed fixing. But it was mine. Every inch, every stone, every fence post, mine. And here's the kicker. This land sits outside the jurisdiction of any HOA. I triple-checked that before I bought it, had a land survey done, got certified copies from the county, even had a judge, friend of mine, review it. Bulletproof. I wasn't just buying property, I was buying peace, or so I thought. The first few weeks were bliss. I woke up with the sun, drank my coffee watching deer drift through the woods, fixed up the barn, got myself 2 cows and a few hens, built a chicken coop with my own damn hands. Hell, I even started learning how to smoke jerky, thanks to my neighbor down the road, old Mr. Harlan, a retired cowboy with more stories than teeth. Everything was calm, until the letters started showing up. First, it was a flyer. HOA welcome packet for Willow Creek Estates. Strange, I thought. There was no estate, just me, Harlan, and some old brush. I tossed it. Then came the friendly reminders. Warnings about violations on my shared property. Shared with who? The cows? Next came the fines. One for an unauthorized barn repaint. Another for non-compliant fencing. It would have been funny if they hadn't slapped an invoice at the bottom demanding $1,275. I knew exactly what they were trying to do. Bully me into submission. Force me to acknowledge a fraudulent HOA they were trying to push across the county line. They picked the wrong man. I started documenting everything. Every letter, every call, every photo of my property line. I even caught one of their so-called officers planting a community mailbox stake on my land and filmed him running off when I asked for his badge number. But I didn't just play defense. I filed counter-complaints with the county, sent certified cease and desist to their fake HOA board. I had my lawyer friend draft a warning. Any further action would be considered trespassing, harassment, and fraud. That should have been the end of it. But no, these people were either arrogant, desperate, or just plain stupid. Maybe all three. And that brings us back to this morning. They thought storming my land with a fake seizure order and a rented U-Haul was going to intimidate. Me? They thought some cheap badge and a clipboard could undo my legal title? I stood firm, one hand gripping the shotgun not as a threat, but as a statement. I will defend what is mine. You're out of line, I said calmly, as their crew scattered. Inside the barn. The sunglasses guy turned to me, face red now. He tried to regain control, but the wind was out of their sails. The moment the alarm went off, they knew they'd screwed up. That's when my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer. I just got your video. If they're still on your land, I'm calling. The sheriff, now! I looked at the guy in front, straight in the eyes. You've got 30 seconds, I told him. After that, you're not leaving here with a clipboard. You're leaving with cuffs. And just like that, their little fantasy crumbled. They backed off, muttering nonsense about misunderstandings and pending boundaries. But they weren't prepared for what came next, because I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. That high-pitched siren kept screaming from inside the barn, cutting through the Texas morning like a battle cry. I didn't shut it off. I wanted it to scream. Let the whole valley know something rotten was happening on Eli Morgan's ranch. Inside, the HOA goons were scrambling like cockroaches under a flashlight. I saw one of them yanking on wires, another slapping the side of my surveillance system like it was an old TV. But what they didn't realize, those cameras weren't just running, they were broadcasting. 2 of my Marine buddies, Cal from Dallas, Petey and Miller from the state attorney's office, were already watching the feed. I'd sent out a code word text the second I saw that rental truck cross my line. Protocol Red Barn. We'd set it up months ago just in case these HOA clowns got bold, and today, they got real bold. The sunglasses guy, the one who thought he was running the show, stormed back out of the barn waving a disconnected camera in the air like it proved something. You can't film us on private HOA enforcement action. He barked. I just laughed. A dry, guttural sound that echoed across the field. This ain't your HOA, pal. And it sure as hell ain't your land. You're on my property, enforcing fake rules with a fake badge and a fake order. And now, you're going to be on the 6 o'clock news. He stepped forward, real slow, trying to puff up like a rooster. "We have authority under Willow Creek Association." I cut him off. "Willow Creek doesn't exist. I checked the county records. I checked the court logs. You're not even registered as a nonprofit corporation. You're a name, a website, and a P.O. box in Houston. And guess what? That P.O. box is already flagged for HOA scam complaints." He didn't say a word, just clenched his jaw and glared at me. Meanwhile, the other 4 guys were standing there, visibly sweating, not just from the heat, but because they knew they'd walked into a trap. And I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't have to point my shotgun. My words were doing the work. Then I saw dust kicking up in the distance, gravel spraying behind a familiar sheriff's cruiser. Lights off, but moving fast. I smiled. "Looks like you got company." The HOA guys spun around. One of them muttered, "We need to go." Sunglasses hissed, "No one moves," but they were already backing away. They knew what was coming. Sheriff Dan Reeves pulled up hard and fast, tires grinding the dirt. He stepped out before the truck even stopped rolling, one hand on his belt, the other holding a folded paper. "Morning, Eli," he said calmly, nodding to me. "Dan." I tipped my hat. Just in time. These boys were about to repaint my barn, without asking. He turned to them, face like stone. "Gentlemen, you've been reported for trespassing, impersonating officers, and attempted property seizure without legal authority. I've got statements. I've got a video. And now," he waved the paper, "I've got a temporary restraining order from Judge Halton. That means you're done here." Sunglasses tried to protest. "This is a mistake." "No," Dan said, sharp as a blade. "The mistake was thinking you could push around a veteran with his paperwork tighter than a Marine's bunk bed." He ordered them to drop the fake paperwork. They refused, so Dan called it in. Within 10 minutes, 2 more cruisers rolled up. The HOA officers were detained for questioning. Not arrested yet, but their truck was impounded, and all their phony HOA documents were seized as evidence. The best part? The boxes labeled evidence were full of generic HOA signs, fake fine slips, pre-filled citation forms, and envelopes addressed to other ranches around the area. They were gearing up for a whole campaign of intimidation, and I'd caught them at the very beginning. After they were escorted off my land, Dan and I stood by the fence line watching the dust settle. He shook his head, lips tight. "I've been hearing rumors," he said. "Wasn't sure it was real. Folks too scared to speak up. But now that you've got this on camera, Eli, this is gonna crack wide open." "Good," I said, "because I'm not the only one they've tried to mess with, but I might be the first to fight back this loud." Dan looked at the barn. The siren had finally died down. "You wired it pretty good," he chuckled. "Marine Corps training," I shrugged. "Always expect the enemy to flank." He nodded. "Well, you flanked him first." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about protecting my ranch anymore. This was about setting the tone, about drawing a line so deep that no clipboard-carrying fraud would ever cross it again in this county. The alarm was never just a warning. It was a declaration. To understand how things spiraled this far, you've got to rewind the tape a bit. Back to when I first set foot on this land. Back to the moment I signed that deed and thought, for once in my life, I can breathe. It was 3 months ago. I'd just left the city for good. Sold my townhouse, packed what was left of my wife's old photo albums, and drove west. I was done with rules, noise, neighbors who complained if your porch light was too bright or your grill smelled too smoky. I wanted space. I wanted peace. I wanted to live by the only code I still trusted, mine. So I bought this little patch of freedom on the outskirts of Cypress Ridge. No HOA, no restrictions, just a rusty red barn, a couple of leaning fences, and 15 acres of grassland kissed by the morning sun. Some people saw weeds. I saw redemption. I was the first to live out here full-time in over a decade. The others either leased to ranch hands or had vacation homes. The guy who sold it to me, Tom Bearden, was a Vietnam vet who wanted to retire to Arizona. He warned me before he left, though. "Keep an eye on the development folks. They've been sniffing around." At first, I thought he meant developers. Big real estate outfits trying to gobble up open land and turn it into golf courses. But I was wrong. This wasn't about condos or cul-de-sacs. This was something worse, something sneakier. It started with a letter, plain white envelope, no return address. Inside was a welcome note from the Willow Creek HOA, congratulating me on becoming a new member of their growing community. There was a payment slip attached for a $250 annual due. I laughed and tossed it, thought it was some junk mail scam. A week later, I got another envelope, this time with a first violation notice. They claimed my barn's faded exterior, lowered neighborhood property values, violation 27. Fine, $375. That's when the red flags started flying. I drove straight to the county clerk's office, pulled every zoning map, every recorded plat, every land use regulation. Nothing put me inside an HOA boundary. In fact, this entire stretch of land was marked agricultural independent, outside all residential zones. But when I tried, calling the phone number on the letter, it went straight to a voicemail, a woman's voice. Slick, corporate sounding. "You've reached Willow Creek HOA. Please leave your name and lot number." Lot number? What lot number? That night, I knocked on Mr. Harlan's door. He's lived here since the 70s. Rode cattle for a living before his knees gave out. He knew every acre within 10 miles of this place. I held up the letter and asked, "Have you ever heard of Willow Creek HOA?" His face turned to stone. "Damn right I have," he said. "Bunch of fake suits came by last year, tried to rope me into some land beautification initiative. Told him to shove it." He showed me a box of unopened mail he'd been collecting, all from the same so-called HOA. Fines, warnings, threats of liens. He'd ignored them all, figuring it was just hot air. But it wasn't. A month later, someone tried to install a community sign on the road leading to both our properties. Big green thing said Willow Creek, a private HOA neighborhood. Looked official, had those little leaf graphics and all. Harlan and I tore it down that same afternoon. Called the county. They said no permits had been filed. It was an illegal sign. And that's when I realized something chilling. This wasn't just a scam. This was a hostile takeover, slow, methodical, and designed to look legitimate from the outside. They weren't using bulldozers or lawyers. They were using paperwork, fake letters, falsified documents, manipulated maps. One family at a time, they were trying to rewrite boundaries that had existed for decades. And most folks, they didn't fight. They either paid the dues out of fear or left. But me? I'd buried friends on foreign soil. I'd stood in courtrooms to defend brothers who came back broken. I wasn't about to let a bunch of clipboard-carrying con men steal what I fought so hard to build, so I started planning. I scanned every letter, logged every delivery date. I installed security cameras. Not just outside, but in the barn, the chicken coop, even one tucked inside an old birdhouse facing the property gate. I reinforced my fences, not with barbed wire, but with legal boundaries. Deed maps laminated, notarized, and backed up in triplicate. And I built something else, too. A trap. Not the kind with spikes or spring-loaded cages, but a digital trap. The moment they set foot past that gate, they triggered a legal ambush that would expose their operation to every sheriff, lawyer, and news station from here to Houston, and sure enough, they walked right into it. They came thinking I'd roll over. They didn't know I'd been waiting. When the dust settled that morning, and the fake HOA enforcers were being questioned by deputies out near the road, I walked back into my barn, shut the alarm off, and sat down on an old wooden crate. I didn't feel victorious. Not yet. Because I knew this wasn't over. Not until I made sure every single one of them paid for what they tried to pull, not just on me, but on every rancher and retiree they'd bullied. That's when the calls started coming in. First was Cal, my old Marine buddy turned Dallas cop. "You just made the news, Eli," he said. "Someone uploaded the barn footage. It's blowing up online. You're trending under fake HOA fiasco." I didn't even ask who uploaded it. I knew it was Miller. He had access to the drive and a bone to pick with scammers. His dad nearly lost his farm to a fraudulent lending scheme 10 years ago. Now he worked in the state attorney's office, and he'd been tracking HOA abuses for months. Good, I told Cal. Let them watch. Let the world see how HOA crooks work when they think no one's filming. But it wasn't just the internet watching anymore. By noon, I had 3 different county officials parked at the edge of my ranch. One of them was Linda Vasquez from the county zoning office. Smart woman, always carried a folder under one arm, and a look that could slice through lies like a blade. She'd seen the footage, too. "I just came from the courthouse," she said, after shaking my hand firmly. "Judge Halton has seen enough. He's drafting an injunction against the Willow Creek Group right now." "Injunction?" I asked. "Yep, county-wide. They're officially blocked from sending further fines, notices, or stepping foot on any land not under their legally defined jurisdiction, which, according to the last zoning map, is exactly 0 acres. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, but she wasn't done. "The judge also wants you to submit everything. All recordings, letters, mail logs, timestamps, everything. We're opening an investigation into HOA impersonation and property fraud. If we find they doctored maps or faked county approvals..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I saw the fire in her eyes. This wasn't just paperwork anymore. This was criminal. Later that afternoon, a news van pulled up. Channel 3 out of Austin. Apparently, someone tipped them off, and now a reporter named Jackie Morano stood at the front gate in heels and a blazer, asking if I'd go on record. Normally, I wouldn't. I'm not the face-on-TV type. But this wasn't about me anymore. It was about drawing a line in the dirt loud enough for every other fake HOA in the state to see it. I stood in front of the camera, barn behind me, arms crossed, and told it like it was. These people thought they could take my ranch with letters and lies. They pretended to be something they're not, and they threatened honest landowners with fake laws and phony fines. I'm a veteran. I've fought for this country. And I won't let anyone, especially not some clipboard cowboy from Houston, tell me how to live on my own land. It aired that evening, and by the next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. I got calls from other landowners, some local, some from other counties, even out of state. People who'd gotten the same letters, same fines, same threats. Some paid out of fear. Others walked away from land they didn't know how to defend. But now, they had proof. I helped a few set up their own surveillance. Others I connected. With Linda at zoning or Miller at the attorney's office. The investigation wasn't just about me anymore. It was a web, and the county was finally pulling at the threads. The best call came 3 days later. It was from Sheriff Dan. "They just arrested 2 of the men from that morning," he said. "Caught them trying to serve fines to an elderly couple 2 towns over. Same playbook, same forged documents." He paused, then added, "One of them rolled. Talked to avoid a felony. Turns out they've been doing this across 5 counties. They'd show up in rural areas, target older landowners, and intimidate them with HOA scare tactics. Most folks didn't know how to push back." I grit my teeth. "But now they do. That's thanks to you, Eli. But it wasn't just thanks to me. It was thanks to every camera, every document, every phone call I made, and every person willing to speak up. And the war wasn't over. Not yet. But for the first time, it felt like we were winning." By the end of that week, the county issued a full bulletin warning residents about the fake Willow Creek HOA. All their websites were frozen. Their P.O. box was seized, and the state opened a fraud case that could stretch for years. And me? I was right back where I started, sitting on the porch with my coffee, shotgun in reach, and that red barn behind me. Except now, I wasn't alone. I had neighbors calling to check in, reporters driving by, letters from strangers thanking me for standing up. What started as a quiet fight turned into a statewide shout, and I wasn't about to let that echo die. The day I signed the deed to this ranch, I made myself one promise. No one's ever taking this land from me, not without a fight they'll remember. I've seen what happens when people ignore the fine print. I've watched buddies lose homes because they trusted the wrong folks in suits. That wasn't going to be me. Not out here. Not on my land. So the moment the ink dried on that contract, I got to work. Not just fixing fences or mending the barn roof, but building something deeper. A defensive perimeter, not with barbed wire, but with law, strategy, and technology. Most folks think owning land just means mowing grass and paying taxes. But where I come from, 2 deployments, one in Kandahar, the other in Fallujah, you learn quickly. If you don't prepare for the ambush, you are the ambush. The first thing I did? Mapping. I took my property lines, verified by 3 different surveyors, and had them notarized, laminated, and filed in 4 separate offices. I cross-referenced them with county records, made sure there were no HOA overlays, no annexation, loopholes, no phantom development rights floating in some dusty folder downtown. I even had the files uploaded to a secure backup server in Utah. Second, surveillance. Now, I'm not talking about one Ring doorbell and a motion light. I'm talking about a full 360-degree solar-powered off-grid surveillance grid. Cameras tucked under the eaves of the barn, one in an old owl box, another wired through the scarecrow in the front pasture, eyes glowing red when motion triggers, all of them feeding into a closed loop and a cloud sync that my tech-savvy nephew in Colorado helped set up. I told him, I don't just want to see who steps on my land. I want timestamps, high-res, and automatic archiving. And that's what I got. Third layer, paper trail weapons. I pre-wrote cease and desist templates, had a list of every law firm within 100 miles that specialized in property rights, created a contact tree with local vets, neighbors, and even a retired judge from Lubbock who owed me a favor. If something went sideways, all I had to do was hit send. I knew what was coming. I could feel it in the air. That HOA nonsense started creeping in around the same time I saw a group of slick SUVs chasing nearby lots. Guys with clipboards, measuring tape. One of them even knocked on my gate one afternoon. He smiled too much. The kind of smile you only see in people who want to sell you something you already own. Just informing nearby residents of our upcoming community transition program, he said. You'll be happy to know your ranch may soon be part of Willow Creek Estates. I asked him one question. You got a warrant? His smile twitched. I shut the gate. That same night, I activated Protocol Red Barn, a plan I'd drafted months earlier in case someone tried to muscle their way into my land. It included everything from legal escalation to media contact, surveillance activation, and even a backup response line with my Marine buddies, just in case things got ugly. So when they showed up that morning, badges flashing, truck rumbling, clipboard shaking, I didn't panic. I was ready. Everything was preloaded. My lawyer got the live footage within 60 seconds. Sheriff Dan got pinged automatically. The county zoning office got a Dropbox link with the fake documents they slapped on my gate. Hell, even Channel 3 News had a burner tip line ready to go, and while they were flailing around in my barn like amateurs trying to rip cameras out of the walls, I was watching it all from the live feed in my study, sipping black coffee and logging every single timestamp. That wasn't just surveillance, that was evidence collection. Some folks build ponds. I built a legal kill box. Why? Because these people don't knock down doors with bulldozers anymore. They do it with stationary, fake websites and envelopes that say urgent violation. They prey on the elderly, the busy, the ones too tired to fight. But I'm not tired. I'm just getting started. By the time those 5 jokers realized they were being recorded, it was too late. Their names, faces, and fraudulent badges were already uploaded, synced, shared, and time-stamped. The sheriff had a folder before they even left the gate. And the best part? They walked into every single one of my traps, voluntarily, on camera. See, the real power in this country isn't in clipboards or plastic badges, it's in proof. And I had proof. They had intentions. That's the difference between accusation and conviction, and I wasn't about to let them walk away with a slap on the wrist, because this wasn't just a win for me. This was a blueprint. For every rancher, every farmer, every homeowner who's ever been told they don't own what they worked for, and the trap I set, it's still active, because something tells me this HOA scam goes deeper than anyone thinks, and I plan to dig out the root and nail. After the smoke cleared, after the restraining orders were filed and the news vans rolled off my gravel road, I knew one thing. It wasn't enough. Catching 5-foot soldiers on my land was just the tip of the spear. These guys didn't print those fake forms in the back of a truck. Someone designed this scam, funded it, coordinated it across counties. And if there's one thing I learned in the Marines, it's this: you don't win a war by defending your porch. You win it by going straight to the command tent. So I got back to work. First, I compiled every piece of footage, every letter, every scan. I color-coded it, time-stamped it, organized it into a dossier thicker than a Sunday brisket. Then I drove it down to the County Fraud Division and handed it straight to investigator Laura Quinn. Sharp woman. No nonsense. She flipped through the first few pages and looked up at me. "You've basically done our job for us," she said. "Good," I replied. "Then you'll have more time to take this whole thing apart." Turns out, I wasn't the only one who'd come forward. Thanks to the news coverage, the sheriff's bulletin, and, let's be honest, my viral barn video, other victims had started speaking up. An elderly widow in Millstone who paid $3,000 in fake violation fees. A family in Birchwood who nearly lost their property after being threatened with foreclosure over their roof color. Even a disabled veteran who sold his RV under pressure from one of these con artists claiming he was lowering property values. All of them had the same stories, same fake documents, same Willow Creek HOA, different enforcers, same script. But now, we had names. Laura's team tracked the IP addresses tied to the HOA website. Guess where it led? An office suite in Houston rented under a shell company called Greenfield Municipal Services, LLC. Sounded official, didn't it? Except that company didn't offer municipal services. It offered paper enforcement kits, customized letterheads, fake HOA templates, and community compliance packages that anyone could buy. One of their sales reps? A man named Travis Polk. And guess who showed up on my land that day? Clipboard, sunglasses, smug attitude. Travis himself. They had him cold. Within a week, a warrant was issued. He was arrested trying to board a flight to Phoenix. His laptop? A gold mine. Email chains between him and half a dozen field agents, all of them coordinating phony enforcement actions on rural landowners. Maps with hand-drawn HOA boundary extensions, fines drafted weeks in advance for properties they hadn't even visited yet. The scheme was clear: target rural counties with weak oversight, fake and HOA name mail out dues and violations use. Intimidation and confusion to collect quick money, expand boundaries through signage, false documents, and social pressure. But not this time, because one rancher said no, one camera caught it all, and one county finally had enough. The sheriff's office worked with the state attorney general to press charges: fraud, forgery, impersonation, attempted extortion, and racketeering. It was no longer just a civil matter. It was a full-blown criminal investigation. They shut down Greenfield's servers, froze their assets, and every single one of those pre-filled HOA fine letters? Now evidence in a case that might land a few of them in federal prison. And me? I wasn't done either. I wrote an op-ed in the local paper titled, "This land is not yours to take." I told the story plain and clear. No drama, just facts. About how one fake HOA tried to steal my land with paper instead of bulldozers, and how they nearly succeeded if I hadn't been ready. It struck a nerve. A week later, I got an invitation to speak at the County Property Rights Conference in Austin. Not as a victim, but as a warning. I stood on stage in front of ranchers, landowners, county clerks, even legislators, and told them exactly how these scams worked. I even shared my checklist, 10 steps to defend your land, and handed it out like ammo before a firefight. Because that's what this was. A war. Not with bullets or barbed wire, but with clipboards, letterheads, and bold lies. And we're not letting it happen again. 3 months ago, I just wanted peace. A small patch of land. No street signs, no traffic cameras, no neighbor asking if I'd mowed my lawn yet. I wasn't looking for war. But war found me. It didn't come in tanks or with rifles. It came in envelopes, in forged forms, in threats typed neatly in 12-point font. And what made me angrier was knowing they'd been doing this to hundreds of people for years, and no one dared speak up, not because they were weak, but because they were alone. People think land is only stolen by force. But in America, the fastest way to take someone's land is to make them believe they have no right to it. Make them believe a name printed on a letterhead is more powerful than notarized land deeds. Make them believe something called the Willow Creek HOA can override the official county boundary maps. That's why I stood up. Not because I'm smarter than anyone, but because I've seen this before, in Fallujah, in Kandahar, in villages wiped off the map by men who claimed authority. I swore I'd never let it happen here, not in my own hometown. When Travis Polk got arrested, I didn't feel satisfied. I felt sad, because all that time, he never stopped. Never questioned, never forced to explain. He ran a full-blown scam network from a fake office in Houston, and people believed him because he could print the letters HOA at the top of a page. But not anymore. The entire Greenfield Municipal Services scheme has been dismantled, accounts frozen, field agents summoned one by one, some ran, some tried to wipe the evidence. But the footage from my barn, the recordings, the testimony from dozens of victims across multiple counties formed a net they couldn't escape. The county attorney sent me a thank you letter. I didn't need it. What I needed was to make sure no one else would be pushed off their land by a scam and a blazer. I didn't need fame either. But I realized, if I didn't tell this story, others would stay silent forever, and the fakes would return, with a new name, a new logo, and new lies. So I started writing. I showed up at town halls. I taught neighbors how to read property records, install budget cameras, spot fake documents. I stood in front of the county board and said, land doesn't just need to be farmed, it needs to be defended. No one taught me that in the military. But maybe the battlefield taught me something more important. Freedom is never guaranteed. It's a choice and a commitment. Now every morning, I still brew coffee in my old kettle, sit on the porch of my wooden house, and watch the cows graze in peace. But I'm not the man hiding from the world anymore. I'm the man who keeps watch. And I know somewhere another fake HOA is probably being drafted right now, but this time they'll be careful, because this land has precedent. It had someone who fought back, and I'm no longer alone. A veteran in the next county put up a sign at his gate, "No HOA fraud." A widowed survivor now teaches retirees how to read deeds. A group of young farmers built a website exposing illegal HOAs across the state. We're not just holding land anymore, we're reclaiming our voice. And if someone reading this is wondering whether they should resist, I'll say this: don't. Wait until they walk through your gate. Start preparing today. Because the truth is, if you let someone else draw the boundary for you, one day you'll find yourself on the wrong side of it. As for me, I've planted my posts, and I'm not backing down.